Ladies and gentlemen, the Season 9 buffs and nerfs have arrived in COD Mobile, so we are back with another top 10 guns in the game. Being honest with you guys, this is one of the toughest top 10 guns lists I've made because there are so many ridiculously powerful guns in the game right now. If you guys think I left anything out, let me know down in the comments. We'll hop into it. Getting started with our honorable mentions, I kind of can't believe it's not actually a top 10 gun anymore, but the MG42 got bumped outside the top 10 because there's so many good options. Don't get me wrong, this is still a phenomenal gun, and in the right situations can keep up with the rest of this list, but its lower damage profile makes it more punishing. Its lack of mobility makes it really tough to use with the aggressive AR meta that we're in right now, and with the amount of trade-offs that you have with its rate of fire attachments, I don't think you can really consider this top 10 anymore. We've also got the Switchblade, which got a nice buff last season and still makes for a great aggressive SMG. Unfortunately for Switchblade fans, we are truly in an all-out assault rifle meta. Another honorable mention which got a nice buff this season is the Grau. The ZLR Drifter barrel got a 6% rate of fire buff, which effectively turns it into an SMG and makes it a lot more competitive with the top ARs. Some of you may be surprised to hear it, but our last honorable mention goes to the Lag 53 with the 13-inch para barrel. This got a substantial buff this season as well, and given the fact that it already gives you better body multipliers to increase your 2-tap potential, even though the attachment turns it into a semi-auto, it also increases the fire interval, making it faster firing than the Odin and giving it one shot to the head potential. Not an easy gun to use, but it goes kind of crazy. Moving into our top 10, first up, we've got the Fennec, which has kind of moved around a few different times. It's one that's tough to place because, number one, it's not nearly as good if you don't have the mythic version, and so many people don't have it, but it's actually going to be released in the upcoming season. With that being said, obviously, the majority of people still aren't going to have the mythic version, which means a lot are going to be stuck with the base, which has a decent amount of aim shake and not great iron sights. With that being said, the Fennec does still have one of the best potential up-close time to kills in the game, which is one of the big reasons it is pretty much the only SMG that gets used in competitive COD Mobile right now. With that being said, its high recoil and lack of range makes it tough to use for the average player, which is why I can't really put it any higher on the list. Next up at number 9, we've got the R9, the only shotgun on the list. The gun's one-shot and even two-shot potential with the build of solid bullet spread accuracy is really pretty ridiculous. And even though it takes a little bit of time to master once you get the hang of it, this can be one of the most ridiculous guns in the game on maps like Summit and Standoff. I will give a quick honorable mention shout out to the KRM, as well as a lot of pro players have started making the switch back to that, especially when playing on Summit. It is a little bit less forgiving than the R9 because you don't have that quick second follow-up shot, and that's really a big reason that the R9 is as good as it is. But when you hit the flow state, you could make the argument the KRM might actually be better than the R9. It really just depends on the situation. Next at number 8, we've got the CX9 with the burst mag. This is one that's gotten pushed a little bit further down the list due to some buffs and new guns being introduced into the meta, and also the gun's situationality makes it tougher for me to put it higher on the list because the burst mag is really tough to use in respawns due to its low ammo count. Obviously, even if you're running something like Vulture, it's tough to use because if you're not hitting your shots, you're probably going to have to reload before you even finish killing one player. But at the same time, the mobility and the extra damage that you get from running the burst mag are so ridiculously strong, it's kind of tough to not put it any higher on the list. Especially when it comes to search and destroy, you could argue this is the best close range gun in the game, and because the CX9 has really clean iron sights on the base version, you don't really have to worry about having the mythic as well. Coming up next, we have the start of the assault rifle takeover on this list. You're going to see a whole lot of ARs the rest of the way out, the first of them being the Type 19. The Type 19 effectively replaced the Grau in the meta when it was first introduced into the game, having a better headshot multiplier that makes it a lot easier to 3-tap. It's better at range and also has a mythic that I would say feels a lot better to play with as well. With the restriction of the BP50 rapid fire barrel in the upcoming champs, I am curious if maybe we'll start to see the Type 19 make some more appearances in the meta because it is such a consistent long range option. I definitely would not be surprised if we start to see it make a return. Coming in at number 6 is a gun that I am really excited for and that, to be honest, I thought was never going to be in our top 10 guns list. The GKS got a massive buff this season and in my opinion is no question the best SMG in the game right now. With the new buff, the GKS is now a guaranteed 3-tap anywhere on the body in the first damage range. But the second and more underrated buff whenever it comes to this gun, I think, is the fact that it's now a guaranteed 4-tap all the way out to 52 meters, which is kind of insane. Having a slower rate of fire, the GKS struggled previously when you weren't getting your ideal time to kill shots due to bad multipliers, but with its damage profile changes, it's a guaranteed 3-tap up close. It's capable of 3-tapping with upper body shots. It's also capable of 2-tapping to the head, which currently can only be done by other fast-firing guns that include the HVK and nothing else. Being an SMG, it's also got really solid mobility, so I think technically you could make the argument that this is better than the DRH, given that it has a faster rate of fire as well. I didn't want to throw it too high up on the list, given the fact that we haven't done extensive testing on it yet, but definitely give it a try and let me know what you guys think of it this season. Next up at number 5, it's kind of hard to believe that it's this low on the list, but that tells you how broken the meta is. The large cal HVK, no question, still a phenomenal option, and really doesn't have a whole lot of downsides, but COD Mobile has some really strong guns right now. Obviously, the one major downside to the weapon is the fact that it does have a lower magazine capacity, and in order for it to have good bullet spread accuracy, typically it's not going to have great mobility either. Like the GKS, the HVK can also 2-tap to the head, and it does have a faster rate of fire as well, but due to the nerf that it received a couple of seasons ago, that 2-tap to the head only extends into the first damage phase. It is also one of those weapons that's not nearly as good if you don't have the best version of it. I would consider the HVK Cartridge Crusher to be the go-to pay-to-win blueprint for this gun. Next up at number 4, we got a combo of 2 different weapons, those being the SKS and the Type 63. Obviously, the SKS has been in our top 10 guns videos for years at this point. It's not received a nerf at any point since it became meta, and because the Type 63 was so powerful, they actually decided to buff it as well. The SKS got a buff to the upper arm multiplier, which gives it better 2-tap consistency in the second damage phase. It also got reduced hip flinch, which now gives it better accuracy in head-to-head gunfights, and it got better recoil recovery as well, so it's just overall easier to use, and yet somehow the Type 63 is actually even better. See, the beauty of the Type 63 is it actually has Black Ops attachments and barrels that offer a faster rate of fire, which means that you can give it faster rate of fire than the SKS, having better multipliers and better mobility. I have them tied on the list, but I would say the Type 63 is definitely the superior option. There's a very real chance that next season I'll have these higher on the list as well. Once again, I don't like putting new guns too high on the list just because we've still yet to see how they play out in the meta, but I would say no question the Type 63 is going to be the long-range meta in COD Mobile. Next up, holding steady in our top 3 is going to be the DRH. This is a gun that's been inside the top 3 guns for quite a while now. The OTM mag still a phenomenal option, even though it can't 2-tap to the head anymore. It's going to stay in the top 10 just because it's so consistent across so many different situations. With the multipliers that the OTM magazine has, it's almost impossible to not 3-tap up close with this thing, and yet at the same time, it has phenomenal mobility and bullet spread accuracy, so it's lethal from just about anywhere on the map, and you don't really have to sacrifice a whole lot of anything in order to build it out well for range. On top of that, we have the free legendary variant of the weapon, and the base version of the gun has really clean iron sight, so even though it's nice to have the blood rose, it's not something that you necessarily need in order to make this gun effective, which is why I'd argue this is probably the second best gun in the game for free-to-play players. Coming in at number 2, holding its spot, the Odin still reigns supreme as the 2-tap king of all the COD Mobile fully automatic weapons. The hand multiplier buffs that I got a couple seasons back made it effectively a fully automatic SKS, although with the buffs that the SKS has gotten, I wouldn't quite say that that's an accurate comparison anymore. The one downside to the Odin being the fact that it's not nearly as good if you don't have the mythic version. There's still some very solid options with decent iron sights, including the original Battle Pass version of the gun. Coming in at number 1 on the list, yes, it's been nerfed 2 seasons in a row. No, those nerfs have not done anything noticeable. The BP-50 is still the best gun in the game for a lot of different reasons. Number 1, this season's nerfs didn't really do anything noticeable to it. You got a downside of a little bit of strafe speed taken off the 60-round magazine, but it's still got so many upsides that it's really not noticeable. Next, it lost a little bit of extra bullet velocity, but given the fact that it's still basically an insta-kill inside of 35 meters, that's another thing that you're not really going to feel in most situations. So very similar to the last time that the BP-50 got nerfed, yes, you might feel some of those changes a little bit more in long-range gunfights, but I would argue that this nerf is actually even less effective than the last one because at least that one made it so that the gun wasn't completely broken in the last damage phase. Despite the fact that the mythic version has a free red dot, there's still some pro players that even opt to use the base version because the iron sights are that clean and it has basically no aim shake. There's not a whole lot of downside to using the BP-50, and unfortunately for multiplayer grinders, you guys are going to have to suffer through another season of this meta. But that's gonna round out our top 10 guns in COD Mobile. Hope you guys did enjoy. If this was helpful, make sure to drop a like down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.